Good morning, YouTube. Inside the shop, it's early still, before 6:30, and having my coffee. Um, we've had some pretty warm weather as of late, and my phone is seemingly on its last legs. I'm trying to decide if I want to. I need a new phone, but I'm just trying to decide if I want to stay with my current provider or switch providers. Um, I'll tell you. Well, that's a whole nother story, I guess. The Verizon incident phone call I had yesterday. Um, but until I get a new phone, I just can't do videos off of it. The sound is so bad. So I'm using my laptop, which limits what I can do and record and yada yada yada. Therefore, it kind of dictates a little bit of what I can do at the moment. So, but I've been enjoying just telling some of these stories, and um, so I think I'll keep going with one more today. Um, oh boy, August of '96, I believe it was. I the dates are a little blurry for me and everything. I Part of me hated the memory so much. I think I just kind of allowed myself to forget the memory of it. But um, yeah, I was in my second year in the Navy. We were in dry dock and we were overhauling, um, getting ready for future deployments and stuff. And it was a it was commonplace to send sailors from the command off to other commands to get training while this is happening. And I was one of those people. I was sent to from the Abraham Lincoln. I was sent to Theodore Roosevelt, which is another carrier, and I was gonna do a cruise with them. I don't remember how long it was gonna be, but um, a good couple months anyhow, and get some training. There was a couple other shipmates that went with me. We got to the ship maybe just a couple days before we got underway, maybe a day before we got underway. Wasn't much. And we were underway for a very short amount of time. I want to say less than a week, or maybe a week. It wasn't much. And I was called up to the V4 division office. Um, I wasn't told why, just told to report to the division office. And I was a little scared. I was like, shit, what the hell did I do? It wasn't my command, so I didn't know these officers and NCOs. I didn't know them very well at all, and I just felt I was walking into something bad. And it was bad. It was just a different kind of bad. They had a note from the Red Cross, a telegram basically, and it was Red Cross letting me know that my grandfather had passed away. I don't know how the message got out. I imagine my family reached out to get the message to me. Um, I had just been home on leave maybe 3, 4 weeks prior, right before this trip, and I saw my grandfather, and well, I'm really grateful that I had that last visit. Um, it was shocking that he passed to me. It really was. It was the first person I knew and cared about that died. Um, yeah, and I wanted to be there. I was hurt. Um, so they offered me the opportunity to go to shore, and that's all they offered me. They weren't gonna fly me home or anything like that. They'll get me to shore I landed at a small, I'll talk about that, but it was a really, really tiny little airport. Um, and in fact, when we landed, there was no one there. They were closed for the evening, but it was a Navy facility, so um, we landed and disembarked. But anyhow, so I back it up, and we were in the office. The decision was made that yeah, they'll get me ashore, and I could go to the funeral. That was my goal. I wanted to be there with my family, and I wanted to pay my respects before my grandfather went in the ground. Um, Now, getting shot off an aircraft carrier, um, I wasn't going to be on a little tiny. I say tiny, but in comparison, I wasn't going to be on a small attack fighter or something zinging off the flight deck like in an F-14 or something. I was going to go to shore on one of the bigger aircrafts that can land on a flight deck. Um, I can't, I want to say they're called the C-2 Greyhound, maybe. I don't know if that's 100% accurate, but we called them CODs, carry on delivery. They brought everything from people to mail, you know, equipment. It was just a smaller cargo type plane that could land on aircraft carrier and take off on aircraft carriers. So I boarded that with some other shipmates and waited in anticipation of this of the launch. I knew the risks involved, and especially the risks involved with this size of an aircraft taking off, and I was a bit nervous. And you face backwards um, in the seats. I don't know. Well, that's just how they were. The seats were facing backwards. Made sense for whatever reason. I imagine the landings and stuff because coming in and hitting that arresting gear really throws you. And I think having you face the other direction, that way you're thrown into the seat instead of thrown forward. But so we launch and we go and we drop off the carrier. And I don't recall if we had windows or anything. I don't think we did. So we really never knew the elevation drop. It might have only been a foot, but it felt like, whoa, just like, I'm supposed to be taking off. Why am I going down? And there's this sensation that you're going off a cliff, and that's the sensation of, disengaging from the catapult and leaving the ship. It was an experience. Um, about an hour later, hour and a half later or so, I was on the ground somewhere, I believe in Virginia. Um, Nobody cared about me. Nobody cared that I was there. Nobody cared where I was going. It was, I was basically on my own, just as the Navy had promised. Um, there was a NCO that was with us. Um, I think he was a crew member. I can't remember, but he just took it upon himself to give me some instruction and help get me to the big regional airport where flights take out of, for places like Buffalo and things. Um, Super grateful for that person. At the time, I was a mess and everything, and I was just going to sleep outside the airport shack there and wait for somebody to open up. I didn't know freaking clue what to do. But that guy helped me get to the airport. Um, might have even took me. But I got in line with one of the first carriers I saw, like US Air or maybe Delta. It was irrelevant. The last planes were boarding, and there was no more ticket sales or um, outbound flights until the next day. We did a lot. Family members back home looked to try to charter a flight. And talked about somebody talked about driving down and picking me up and driving me back. And but ultimately, I had to stay the night in that airport. Um, I was sick with despair. I really was. I was exhausted. I was hungry. I was getting asked to leave from different people, and I would just kind of scurry out of the area and go find another spot to sleep. And it was a janitor that suggested I go sleep in the bathroom. And I thought this guy was nuts, but he was right. It was the right thing to do. So I went and I found an off, out of the way bathroom, and I made camp there for the night. I pulled out my dress whites and I prepped them and polished all my gear up. Didn't sleep, but yeah, and I just waited for morning to get a flight. I finally got on board a flight. It wasn't one of the early first ones to get me up there in a short amount of time. It winded up being a little later in the day, and this was pre-cell phone time and whatnot. So when I landed in Buffalo, and I don't know who I called, but somehow I got a hold of my friend JJ, who was a neighborhood friend that I grew up with, and he came up to the airport and picked me up and took me to the service. And the service had ended. I had just missed it. They were gathered at the church for refreshments and whatnot, and I'll never forget the sensation of walking into that room. And I think everybody felt it. I just felt cheated. It was a really hard moment for me. Still is to this day. I just never got to say goodbye in that fashion to my grandfather, and I held a lot of resentment towards my family. I didn't understand why they couldn't just wait a little bit. I had a lot of resentment towards the Navy. I didn't understand how they considered me a top tier sailor and could do that to me, you know, um, leave me so alone in a moment when I needed them a lot. I spent years dwelling on that day and that moment and everything. I'd be out drinking on town somewhere and I would get upset and I would drive to the cemetery, hop the fence, and run to the back and find Grandpa's grave and just cry. So, I one time took my dog tags off and I left them there And anybody who's been in the service knows how valuable those dog tags are to you. Um, I never really recovered from that. I went back to my command and I was a mess. I was mad. I was hurt. And I began to drink excessively. I had a cooler in my room. We lived off base at the moment that I'm talking about, but I had a cooler in my room with beer in it, and I would wake up in the middle of the night and just start drinking because it was really the only thing that was taking any kind of pain away. But it was a lesson learned, you know. As painful as it was a lesson learned that no matter the circumstances, you're going to be in it alone. Um, for various reasons, help doesn't always come. Um, things don't always work out. But I don't know. That's the story. It's a story that, for me, I know it was a pivotal point in my life. Like things went drastically different in part because of that incident. Um, I really had no love left for the Navy at that point, and they facilitated my alcohol dependency and even encouraged it. So hug your grandfathers when you see them, and hug your grandmothers and your mothers and fathers and stuff. It just never guaranteed that next moment with a person, and we not guaranteed to see them put to rest either. I mean, we need closure in our lives oftentimes, otherwise our mind creates weird scenarios and everything. And that's what it was for me. I just really, really needed to say goodbye to my grandpa. And the distance of the earth that was between us, that few feet of dirt, was too far um, away from him. Never was I going to get close enough to tell him that I loved him and to hug him. Um, but certainly people have had it a lot worse than me, and I've had time to grow and heal and everything. But that's the story, like I said. And thanks for hearing me out. I didn't realize how therapeutic sometimes just talking about stuff is, or even hashing over the story. Like I said, I'm definitely at a better place in my head about the whole situation. I still hold resentment, but um, it wasn't anybody's fault. It was just a situation of circumstance. I was fortunate to come home, even though I was missed it by, you know, seemingly minutes, maybe hour or something like that. But um, most on duty, active duty personnel don't just get to leave to go home for a funeral, maybe for a sibling, or a father, mother type thing, but they start to draw the line at distant relatives. You know, you can always take leave if you're approved, but this, I wasn't using leave or anything. They excused me and gave me basically a long travel window from the Roosevelt to back to the Lincoln, allowing me to have, you know, a few days at home in between. And I never did use leave. It was, I don't know, they worked their magic, I guess. Thanks, folks. I hope you all have a great day.